Okay, so today I'm going to show you how I created this ChatGPT 4 clone using Bubble.io and Flowise. In this case, this ChatGPT clone has the personality of a rapper. So for example, if I ask him, give me the formula to create the perfect burger, and I send this, he creates a conversation, and by default he gives it the name of new conversation. But once ChatGPT gives us a response, he's going to rename this with a name related to the conversation we are having with ChatGPT. And as you can see, he responds with that rapper style. Some of the features that this application will have are to create new chats. So for example, I can ask new questions, hello, to see other conversation that we had in the past, to delete any conversation that we want, and to log out and register as new users, or log in if we already have an account. So any further ado, let's dive into it. For those who don't know me, I am Jose. I have been developing apps for businesses for over 4 years now. And if you are looking to develop an application and need help with it, you can book a call with the link I leave you in the description. For this tutorial, we're going to be using Bubble.io and Flowise. Flowise, I think, is the best no-code tool to develop chatbots or agents. You will need to register into Flowise by starting here, or you can host it in your own server. Once you are logged in your Flowise account, you will access to this screen in where you can see your chat flows. In this case, these are the chat flows that I used to the application that I just showed you, and I'm going to replicate each of these ones for our application. So let's hit this button, and in this case, we're going to set up a simple chat flow, but in further tutorials, I'm going to create more and more complex applications. So let's go with a buffer memory. Okay, this is the memory that will store the conversations that we have with the chatbot. You can set up third-party memories, for example, memories like Upstash or zip memory, etc. The next thing is the chat module with OpenAI. Let's search it. This one. Let's select the AI model that we are going to use, and you will need to set up the credentials. If you don't have the credentials set up, you just have to name it and go to your API key manager in your OpenAI account and type here the API key that it gives you. For this tutorial, I already have set up this OpenAI API key, so I'm going to select this, and now just left to put chain module, the conversational chain module. And now that we have the 3 modules that we're going to need, you just have to link them in their respective nodes. In order to give personality to this chatbot, you will need to edit this prompt. In this case, I'm going to use the prompt I used in the example application. You can use it at your taste. And let's save this chatbot as the tutorial. Okay, so this will be the chatbot our users will interact with. Now we just need to create other chat flow to name every conversation based in the messages of each one. So you just have to click here and click in duplicate chat flow. But this time we're going to change the prompt here for a prompt that is going to tell this chatbot how he should name conversations. Let's save this, and I'm going to save this chat flow as dog namer tutorial. Okay, and that's all we need to do in Flowise. Now let's jump into Bubble.io. Now in Bubble.io, you will need to download 2 plugins. The first one is the API connector, and the second one is the repeating group to chat reverse RG. So install them and you can continue with the tutorial. We will create 2 pages. One is the index page and the other one is the chat page. So I am going to replicate them. The index page. For the background, I am going to set this color. Now I'm going to create the header. Let's set this page as a column. The header will have a min height of 60 pixels, no fixed width. Okay, now I'm going to set the background style as flat color with this color that I already set, and I'm going to add the image for the logo, but in this case I'm going to just copy and paste this. to here. You can create this at your taste. Now let's go with the text. I'm going to put this text, center it, and I'm going to paste this text. Set a maximum width of 800. Yeah. And for the page, I'm going to set a gap between elements of 20 pixels. Okay, I'm going to set this as bold, 24 pixels, and the color will be this one that I set it. Let's create a group for the login and register feature with a maximum width of 800. Let's add some roundness and a background color. Let's add 10 pixels of padding for each side. And a group that will be the login group. This group will contain the inputs, the email input. Let's set a background color, this color, the text will have this font, the placeholder color to this one, add 60%, the roundness of 20 pixels, and remove the borders. Okay, let's copy this, click Ctrl D. I'm going to add a gap between elements of 10 pixels, and this input will be the password. Okay, I'm going to set this as an email, this one as a password. Let's check this checkbox and this one too in both. I'm going to add a button to log in the user. Let's set the background color as this one and the font color with this color, and this will be the login button. 20 pixels of roundness and a minimum width of 250. And I'm going to replicate this one, Ctrl D, because if the user doesn't have an account, I'm going to allow them to register. So let's put here, create an account, select this, remove the background color, and I'm going to put the minimum width as 0. And click this one, clicking on shift, click this one too, and group the elements in a row container. Let's add some gap between elements, 10 and 10, and that's it. Click here, Ctrl D, and replicate that. So this will be the login group, and this one will be the register group. So here, instead of create an account, it is going to say I have an account, and this one will say register. Okay, now in this case, this group is not going to be displayed when the page is loaded, and let's check this collapse when hidden. And this group will be collapsed when hidden, but will be shown once the page is loaded. Let's click this group, Ctrl D, and make last. Okay, and the page will have this container alignment. So now if we click here, let's remove this variable. Now you can see that the page is pretty long, so I'm going to set this minimum height as 600 pixels. Okay, now it's displayed properly. So let's add the functionality to log the user in and switch between these two groups. So click here, copy this text, click on this button, add a workflow, and this workflow we toggle the group register and this group. Ctrl C, toggle the group login. Okay, and let's click here, copy and paste, because now we are going to do the same but with this button. Ctrl C. Let's rename this button as, delete the name of the button, and it is going to rename it automatically. So Ctrl C, workflow, Ctrl V. Okay. Now we can switch between the two groups, and let's add the functionality to login and register the user. So let's click here on login, add a workflow, in account, log the user in. This email will be the email for login, copy and paste it here. And the password is the password for login. Ctrl C, paste it here. Okay. And once the user is logged in, let's redirect him to the page of the chat. So I'm going to create that page, new page, chat, tutorial, create. Okay, we have created the page for the chat. Let's go back to the index tutorial to continue setting up all the buttons. Okay, we're in this button, and now we can redirect the user to the chat tutorial page. Copy this and paste it here, but this time it is going to be activated by the register button, and delete this action. Okay, let's add a new action, account, sign the user up, and let's go with the email. This is the email for the register and password for the register. Okay, so let's copy this, paste it here, and the password, copy and paste. Okay, perfect. Now I think that everything is set up. Let's go with the chat tutorial page. Okay, in this case I'm going to set the background with this color, and the page is not going to be a column but a row. Let's add two groups. One, Control D. Now we have two groups. This group will have a maximum width of 300 pixels, and the background color will be this one. Okay, let's change the vertical alignment to this one, vertical stretch, in both groups, and I'm going to set this as 600 pixels. Okay, now let's create the header. I forgot to add padding to this group, so I'm going to set 10, 10, 20 and 20. Okay, now let's continue with the header. The header will have the logo and the logout button. For the logo, I'm going to copy from here and paste it here. Let's set this group as a row, and for the logout button I'm going to set a button to log out the user. Okay, let's center this button and change the container alignment to this one. Perfect. Let's add a gap between elements to this group of 10 pixels and a button without a background color. Let's set the font color to this. This will be a icon and label. The icon will be on the right. Let's change the alignment to this one, change the color of the icon and select the edit icon. I'm going to copy, create, chat. Okay, and set the roundness to 10 pixels. Select this and change the background color when this button is hovered or clicked. Okay, now let's add a text that will say chat history. Let's add to this text a margin of 20 on the left and put it bold. Okay, and the last group that we are going to add is the group that will have the history of conversations. So let's go, create the group. It's a column, allow vertical scrolling, and uncheck this. Let's add a repeating group. Okay, uncheck this and uncheck this. Uncheck this one too. And let's set the type of content. Before that, I'm going to show you how I structure the data. You have to create data type called conversations. This data type will have text field that will have the name of name, a user field that I called owner, and a session ID field that is a text field that will store the session ID of our ChatGPT conversation. So this is important when communicating with Flowise to continue with the same conversation and not starting a conversation again and again and again every time we send a message. And the other data type that I created is the messages data type that will have the conversation, that will have the conversation, the creator. In this case, the creator is an option set. So you go to option set, create one that is the chat role, and I created a human and a machine. You just have to copy here something and create this. I'm going to delete that. And yeah, you just set a human and a machine, and the message that is a text. So keeping that in mind, let's go to our repeating group and set this one as a list of conversations. Let's do a search for the conversations, who the owner is, the current user, and sort by the created date. Yes. Okay, and last but not least is the group that will store every conversation. So the data type of this group is conversation. I'm going to call this group each conversation, and we have to add a text and an icon. Let's set this group as a row, set the bottom margin at 5 pixels. Okay, let's set the text color to this one, and copy this, go to the text, insert the dynamic data, paste this. Okay, the conversation name, perfect, name. Okay, let's go here, click this, and now let's add an icon. This icon will be the trash can, the same color as the text, center it, and the container alignment will be this one. Okay, let's add 10 pixels of padding in the right and 10 pixels in the left. And on this text, let's uncheck this checkbox. Perfect. Now let's go again with the group each conversations. The background color, set it as flat color. The color will be this one, but in this case add 0 of opacity. The roundness of 10 pixels, and let's add some conditional. Okay, the conditional will be when this group is hovered, the background color will be this one. And copy this name and click here and copy this conditional. Go to the name, paste that, paste the group, and change the color of the text. Okay, now let's go with this other group that I'm going to call conversation, and the type of content of this group will be conversation. I'm going to add 2 groups inside this group. 1, Ctrl D, 2. Okay. The first one will be the chat container, and the second one will be the input container. Let's add a text that we can copy from the landing page. This tutorial, copy this, go again to the chat tutorial, Ctrl V. Here you can add any message you want. I'm going to put this one, but you can set this at your taste. Let's create another group inside the input container. This will be the input. I'm going to set the max width of 600 pixels in this one and in this one. Let's center it, add a roundness of 20 pixels, a background style of flat color, and the color will be this one. This group will be a row that will contain a multi-line input and an icon to send the message. Let's set the icon color as this one and the background color, flat color, this one. Okay, I'm going to set this button as 40 by 40 pixels and add 10 on each side and 10 pixels of roundness. For the input group, let's add a padding of 10 for each side, and for the multi-line input, I'm going to remove the borders and to uncheck this one. Okay, the last thing here is to put this at the bottom, and the min height, it will be 0. Okay, perfect. Let's add a space between elements of 10 pixels, and this text is just going to be visible when the user has a new conversation with the chat. So for that, I'm going to click here. That is where we are going to store the conversation. Copy this, go here, and add a conditional. When the group conversation is empty, this group will be visible, and it is not going to be visible on page load. Okay, the container alignment of this group will be this one, and let's add 20 pixels at the bottom. Perfect. Now let's go with the chat container. Let's add this element that is from the plugin that we installed before, and this plugin is used to reverse the orientation of the scrolling of our repeating group, so that it is similar to how it looks in a normal chat. This will be the IDs that we can use. These are the IDs of the repeating groups that will be affected by this element. Now let's add a group, and inside the chat we are going to put the repeating group that will store the messages. Okay, uncheck this. The max width as 600 pixels. Okay, perfect. Uncheck this from the chat container, and let's put a text here in the repeating group. So before we continue, let's set the data source of the repeating group. Do a search for messages that has the linked conversation as the one we have stored in this group. Let's copy this, go to the repeating group, okay, and paste it here. Perfect. And sort by created date, yes. Okay, let's set the max width of this text as 80%, and I'm going to add a roundness of 10 pixels, flat background with 0 opacity, the color of the text as this one, and this text will be from the current self message. Perfect. Let's add some padding, 10, 10, 10, and 10 pixels, and let's add these tags here and here. Perfect. Now we need to add a conditional to differentiate when a message was sent by a human or by Flowise. So let's define another condition. When the current self message creator is a machine, the text will be, let's copy this, paste it here, and we are going to change left for right, and here right too. The background color will be this one, and the horizontal alignment will be this one. Okay, perfect. With that done, now we can go to the plugins section, the API connector, and let's set the Flowise API. So we are going to need 3 API calls, one to start a conversation, the second one to continue with the conversation, and the third one will be the namer of each conversation that will call the chat flow that we created in Flowise to give names to each conversation. So you can click here on add another API, name it as Flowise, then click here on expand, and this will be the start conversation. Okay, I'm going to put tutorial on each one to differentiate this one from this one. Okay, this will be a post call, will be used as an action, and the URL will be from Flowise. So let's go to our Flowise dashboard, go to the chat flow that we just created, this one, talk tutorial, click here. On this section, you are going to copy this URL and paste it here. Now let's add a header to this API call. The key will be content type and the value will be application JSON. The body will be this one, and let's initialize this. Hello, initialize. Okay, it worked properly. I'm going to uncheck this variable, and let's go with the next API call. In this case, it will be the continue conversation tutorial. It will be used as an action. It's a post method. We will use the same URL that we just put in the other API call, and in this case the body is different. I'm going to copy this body from here and paste it here. Uncheck this. The message can be how are you, and the session ID is given by Flowise. So if we go here to manually enter API response, we can see the session ID that Flowise gave us. So Ctrl C and Ctrl V here. And now we can initialize the call again. Okay, it worked properly. And last but not least is the namer. It is a post API call used as an action. I'm going to go here, copy this and paste it here, and we need to go to our Flowise dashboard again, but this time we're going to select the chat flow namer. Click here and copy this link and paste it here. Okay, perfect. So the message, I'm going to put hello again, initialize call, save, uncheck this variable, and we are all set up with the API calls. So we can continue with the chat. Let's click here and add a workflow. Before we continue, I'm going to set a workflow when the user is logged out to redirect them to the index page. Okay. Now when we click this button, we can have two situations. One when the conversation is already created, and the other one when it is empty. So a conversation will be started when the data source of this group is empty. So let's add a conditional here when, copy this, and here, when the conversation of this group is empty. Okay, So when the conversation is empty, we're going to create a new conversation. Create a new thing, conversation. The name will be by default new conversation. The owner will be the current user, and the session ID will be empty by now. Then we will create the first message. So let's create a message, add all the fields. The conversation is the result of step 1. The creator is a human, and the message is the text from this input. Okay, now we are going to reset the relevant inputs and to set the data source of this group. Ctrl C, let's go here, element actions, display data is the result of step 1, and initialize the API call. So let's go to plugins, Flowise tutorial, start conversation. Okay, and the message will be the result of step 2 message. Okay, perfect. Now we need to go here, make changes to a thing, the result of step 1, because now we have the session ID that is the result of step 5, session ID. Now we need to create a new message. The conversation is the result of step 1. The creator is a machine, and the message will be the result of step 5, text. Okay, now we need to name this conversation. So I am going to initialize the namer, and the message will be the same one, the result of step 2 message. And the last thing is to rename the conversation. So let's go here, make changes to a thing, result of step 1. The name will be the result of step 8, that is the namer. Perfect. And let's click here, copy and paste. Now we need to set the actions that will be triggered when the conversation is not empty. When it's not empty, we don't need to create a new conversation. Okay, we need to create a new message, and this message will be set for the conversation that is in the data source of this group. So let's click here, the conversation. Okay, perfect. We reset relevant inputs. We don't need to display data in this group because it already has the data displayed. And we are going to initialize other API call. In this case, continue with a conversation. And let's set this here. So the conversation ID will be from the group conversation session ID, and the message is the result of the step 1 message. Now we can delete this API call because this is a start conversation. We can delete this one too, and now we are going to create a new message with the response that Flowise give us. So the message will be the result of step 3 text, and the conversation is from the group conversation, and we can delete the namer and this other action. Okay, let's set up this button that will log out the user. So here we go to account, log the user out, and for deleting a conversation we will need to delete a list of things, delete all the messages. So we are going to do a search for all the messages, which conversation is the group conversation conversations, and then we can delete the conversation. So in data, delete a thing, the conversation, and the last thing is to enable to select a conversation. So let's add here a workflow, element action, display data on this group, and the data that is going to be displayed is from this one. I forgot to set this data source that will be the current sales conversation. Perfect. And I think that is it. So if we click here, okay, the app sent us to the index page. I'm going to delete this variable, and let's register a new user. So let's say that he is rocky.balboa.com 12345, register. Okay, let's say how to make the best rap lyrics. How to make the best rap lyrics. And it gave us this response, but I think that is not set it up properly. So let's go here. I forgot to put to this repeating group the ID attribute of rg1, because this ID attribute is the one that this repeating group reverse is affecting. If we reload the page and we select this one, okay, now it works better. Let me see. Okay, I think that this should be switched. When it's a human, it should be at the right, and when it's a machine, at the left. Okay, now I see what happened. What happened is that here in the API connector for the namer, I didn't set it up the URL correctly. So now I'm going to go to Flowise, copy the proper URL, Ctrl C, and paste it here, Ctrl V. Now if we go to our chat and ask him something like how to create the best pizza dish. Yeah, now it is working properly. As you can see here, slice of heaven. And if we click here, oh, I didn't set up this button. So let's go here, click on this button. What this button is going to do is to reset data on the group conversation. Okay, now if we click here, we can see our conversation, but we can click, if we click in create chat, we can create again a new chat. So for example, how to read faster. It is going to send an API request to Flowise, and now it works properly. Okay, we can delete the conversation too, log out, and it is working properly. So I hope this helped you to build your own AI no-code application, and if you need help building your own no-code application, you can reach me out on the link I leave you in the description. Either is booking a call or contacting me via LinkedIn. Bye!